When I say World War One, you might think of the French, the British, or the Americans fighting against the mighty German Empire. But there's a hidden chapter of this war that is often overlooked outside of Scandinavia. This is the story of a forgotten group of soldiers who were forced to put on the enemy's uniform and fight for a cause they completely despised. It's a story about surviving certain death in one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war, a daring escape across enemy lines, and how a brutal case of trench foot ended up saving a young soldier's life. Ew. This is the story of Hans Christian Ensted, a young Dane from the southern part of Jutland, where he and thousands of young men like him were forced into a war fighting for the enemy. And this is also the story of my great-grandfather. Now, I never met my great-grandfather myself, as he was born 105 years before I was born, but these are the stories passed directly down to my father by the man himself. So, to really grasp the weight of this story, you have to understand the heartbreaking reality for the people of southern Jutland at the outbreak of the war in 1914. A heavy shadow hung over the region, and to understand why, we have to rewind exactly 50 years. In 1864, Denmark suffered a devastating defeat to the Prussian army at the Battle of Dybbøl Mill. Overnight, the Danish people living in southern Jutland woke up as citizens of the German Empire. For half a century, they lived under strict German rule. Their Danish language was banned in schools, and their culture was suppressed. They were Danish by blood, but German on paper. So when World War I broke out, over 30,000 young men from small farming towns found themselves in an absolute nightmare. They were conscripted and forced into German uniforms, ordered to fight for the very empire that was occupying their homeland. Many of them barely adults, forced to bleed for the nation that had conquered them. Hans Christian was only 19 years old when he was drafted in 1914 and sent to the front lines in western France, along with his buddies from the local area. Here he experienced the first years of trench warfare with its constant shelling, gas attacks, and fear. Then in 1916 he was transferred to the place that would soon become known as Hell on Earth, the Battle of Verdun. The Battle of Verdun lasted from February to December 1916 and became one of the most notorious battles of the entire war. The Germans wanted to bleed France white, directly translated from Weißbluten, which basically means that the Germans wanted to bleed the French to that last drop of blood. And to the French, it was about holding their ground at any cost. The fighting lasted for almost 10 months, making it the longest single battle of World War I. Around 300,000 soldiers lost their life, and more than 700,000 were wounded or missing. The area was carpet-bombed by artillery. On some days, up to 1 million shells were fired. The landscape turned into a desolate moonlight terrain where nothing green remained. For the soldiers, life in the trenches wasn't exactly the greatest. Under constant fire and with their fear of gas attacks, the boys from southern Jutland often stood in mud and water up to their knees. It was here that Hans Christian, like many others, was hit by the so-called trench foot. Trench foot happens when soldiers stand for a long time in cold, wet trenches, which restricts blood circulation to the feet, resulting in swollen, painful feet covered in blisters. He tried to hold out for as long as he could. Everyone in his platoon was from southern Jutland, you see, so for the sake of comradeship, he would do anything to stay. But eventually, it got so bad and his feet so swollen that he couldn't even get his feet out of his boots. So he was sent away from the front line to a military hospital in Berlin. In Berlin, the doctors and officers quickly discovered that Hans Christian was a trained blacksmith. And that changed his fate. Instead of being sent straight back to the front, he was transferred to a factory where his skills in the blacksmithing trade meant he was put to work manufacturing the mighty Krupp cannons. The Krupp factories were located in Essen, in the heart of the Ruhr district, Germany's largest industrial area. This is where the Germans produced everything from the small 77mm field guns to the enormous Dicke howitzers that could smash fortifications. Krupp's weapons were known throughout Europe. They were the symbol of the German war machine's power. But Hans Christian felt trapped. He no longer wanted to be a pawn in the German war machine, and he missed his beloved southern Jutland and his family. So one night he saw his chance to escape the factory and fled north. Hans Christian set off on foot towards Bremen and further towards the Verdun Sea. He would walk at night along the coast, so far out in the sea that he couldn't be seen from the shore by the Germans. During the day he would hide in the dunes, always at risk of being either shot or captured if he was discovered. After a dangerous journey, he managed to cross the border and make it back to Denmark through Tønder. His longing for home so strong that he, despite the risk, returned to Tinglev. But the Germans quickly found out that he had gone back home. He was arrested and faced being sent back into battle once again. His only hope was requesting to be sent back to his old Southern Jutland company. But here he got the gruesome news. His entire company had been blown up shortly after he himself had been hospitalized in Berlin. No one from his old company had survived. Hans Christian's swollen feet had saved his life. Without Trenchfoot, I wouldn't be here today to tell his story. Unfortunately, the war didn't end here, and since he couldn't be reunited with his old company, he was instead sent to the southern sector of the Western Front, way up in the French Alps. Here, he and his unit were positioned in the mountains, where they could shoot down directly at the enemy in the valleys. The cold, the artillery, and the endless shooting wore him down. The noise from gunfire gradually took his hearing, and at the age of 23, he was already severely scarred by the war. One foggy November day in 1918, Hans Christian and his company were sitting in their log cabin in the mountains. Suddenly through the fog, they see a group of men approaching the cabin. They assumed it was German soldiers, as rumors of peace negotiations had been swirling around for a long time, and they were therefore convinced that the end of the war was near. So one of my great-grandfather's mates opens the door and welcomes the men inside, and is instantly thrown across the room by a hail of bullets, and is killed on the spot. The men weren't Germans, they were French.
Как я хочу к ним прижаться теперь губами. Темная ночь разделяет любимая нас.
Normally, you'd be shot on the spot, but Hans Christian and the rest of his company were taken prisoner. On November 11th, 1918, at 9 in the morning. Just 2 hours before the war officially ended. After this, he was sent to a prison camp in France, where he spent a whole extra year under terrible conditions before he could finally return to his beloved Tinglev. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. Hans Christian lived out the rest of his life in Tinglev as a blacksmith and a woodworker. Had kids, grandkids, and a good life all around. He never spoke much about the war, and I can only imagine the horrible reasons why he didn't do that. My dad tells me that sometimes at night he would think that the Germans were crawling around at the foot of his bed, behind the bed frame. So yeah, take from that what you will.